stream. We've got this. Can this thing keep going? Oh, no. We've got this nice research that Gemini prepared for us based on what we were talking about yesterday. This was in response to what Onion Helmet posted, pointing out the reproducibility crisis in psychology within the past 15 years. Yikes. And yeah, so we had a plan, research website, research the origins and definition, identify primary causes, specific studies involved, and then kind of the where we went from there and like how's it looking today. So I kind of like doing that to get a sense of what is actually happening here. Oh, we got a table of contents. That's awesome. So I think I'm just going to read through this. We do have other stuff we could do afterwards. We could continue organizing part 2 stuff. And we also have all of our stream transcripts done up until today. So we could actually ride. All right, one second. All right. Yeah, so I think we could start making stream summaries with those, but I don't know if that's going to be a fun thing to do on stream. Perhaps I just work on that while I'm away, because I can now do that given that I've uploaded all those summaries. So yeah, hopefully while I'm gone, I get all the stream summaries up on Reddit, and then also I post on the Substack. We should have maybe one I think a summary, like a single post that summarizes every single month that we can up until today. So it would be something like, yeah, how would that be? What would be the best way to do that? Would it be starting with the newest month and then keep going down farther away? I doubt that. I think it would be best to go in order, perhaps. Yeah, so that'll be fun. I'll do that when I'm home. All right, the epistemic reckoning, a comprehensive analysis of the reproducibility crisis in psychological science, 2010 to 2025. Executive summary. The discipline of psychology has undergone a profound and turbulent transformation over the last 15 years. What began as a series of methodological anxieties in the early 2010s has metastasized into a comprehensive reproducibility crisis, a term that, while contested by some as alarmist, accurately captures the systematic failure of the field's foundational findings to withstand empirical scrutiny. This report provides an exhaustive analysis of this period, tracing the crisis from its inciting incidents in 2011 to the complex politicized landscape of 2025. Wow. Okay. The ramifications of this crisis have been total. They extend beyond the laboratory and into the machinery of academic publishing, the criteria for tenure and promotion, the funding priorities of federal agencies, and arguably the public's trust in scientific expertise itself. I see, this is where we're heading. Okay. We have witnessed the collapse of canonical theories that once filled textbooks, from social priming to ego depletion, and the rise of a new meta-science devoted to the rigorous, if sometimes ruthless, auditing of scientific claims. Wow. As of May 2025, the crisis has entered a new and volatile phase with the issuance of Executive Order 14303, restoring gold standard science. The internal reforms of the open science movement have been co-opted into federal policy, creating a paradoxical environment where the demand for reproducibility potentially threatens scientific independence. Wow. This report details these developments, synthesizing data from large-scale replication projects, institutional policy changes, and the ongoing cultural war over the nature of scientific truth. Part 1, the collapse of the old regime, 2010 to 2012. To understand the magnitude of the reproducibility crisis, one must first appreciate the epistemological culture of psychology prior to 2010. For the latter half of the 20th century, the field operated under a paradigm that prioritized conceptual novelty over cumulative certainty. The incentive structure of academia, publish or perish, rewarded researchers for finding counterintuitive, flashy effects that garnered media attention. The statistical safeguards against false positives were deeply eroded, sustained by a gentleman's agreement that discouraged direct replication and treated data sharing as an infringement on intellectual property. Wow. This fragile ecosystem collapsed under the weight of 3 simultaneous events in 2011, which served as the diagnostic stress test for the entire discipline. Ooh. 1.1, the impossible finding, the Bem affair. If a single publication can be identified as the catalyst for the modern crisis, it is arguably Daryl Bem's 2011 article in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, the field's flagship journal. Titled Feeling the Future, Experimental Evidence for Anomalous Retroactive Influences on Cognition and Affect. The paper presented 9 experiments with over 1,000 participants that ostensibly provided statistical evidence for precognition, the ability of future events to influence past responses. Whoa. Bem, a highly respected social psychologist, used the standard methodological toolset of the field to prove the impossible. In one experiment, participants were able to identify the location of an erotic image behind a curtain on a computer screen significantly more often than chance, but only before the computer had randomly selected the location. The results were statistically significant, passing the standard threshold of p is less than 0.05 across 8 of the 9 studies. Whoa. Okay. What just happened here? Able to identify the location of an erotic image behind a curtain on a computer screen significantly more often than chance, but only before the computer had randomly selected the location. The publication of this paper sent shockwaves through the scientific community, not because researchers believed in ESP. Rather, it forced a terrifying realization. If the standard methods of empirical psychology, null hypothesis, significant testing, randomized design, and standard reporting practices could validly prove a physical impossibility, then the methods themselves were fundamentally broken. Yes, was it out of chance that he was able to get this thing to happen, or not out of chance, but like, was he purposely doing it out of luck, or was this something that he knew he could get? Critics immediately noted that Bem had likely engaged in optional stopping, checking data for significance as it is collected and stopping when p is less than 0.05, and selective reporting of conditions. Okay, I see. However, these practices were not explicitly forbidden at the time. They were the norms. The Bem affair demonstrated that the standard operating procedures of psychology had a false positive rate so high that they could distinguish noise from signal only by accident. Wow. Okay, so then the question is, what was his intention here? Was his intention to make this clear, or what was he trying to operate and prove something that was that he actually thought was true? All right, let's get a second Gemini going here. Did Bem purposefully publish something that he knew would assault the standards of psychology at the time? I just butchered that. Or was he just operating under the incentive structure and actually believed in his findings. This doesn't really matter, but I'm kind of curious because I would obviously be much more impressed by the first. Investigating the beliefs. Based on the evidence from interviews, his prior writings, and the fallout of the 2011 Feeling the Future paper, the consensus is that Daryl Bem was operating under the incentive structure of the time and genuinely believed in his findings. Wow. There's no evidence he published it as a Sokal-style hoax? Where does Sokal-style come from? What does Sokal-style come from? It's following the standard flawed rules of the time. It was not that he cheated, but that he didn't. He followed the standard operating procedures of 2010 social psychology. Yo, Dharmadam, what's good? We are looking into the epistemic reckoning, a comprehensive analysis of the reproducibility crisis in psychological science. So we're walking through that, starting with this impossible finding by Bem, where he found that participants were able to identify like an image prior to it actually happening, something like that. Something that would be impossible, but because the standards of I guess the standards of scientific rigor in the field of psychology were such that he could critics immediately noted that Bem had likely engaged in optional stopping, checking data for significance as it was collected, and stopped when he hit the mark that people usually go for, the p-value less than 0.05, and selective reporting of conditions. So this kind of started this whole falsifiability, the reproducibility issue. And I was trying to figure out if Bem was purposely doing this or if he actually believed in his own finding. And apparently it seems like he believed in his own findings, but I'm curious. They used this term, the Sokal-style hoax. There's no evidence to suggest he published the paper as a Sokal-style hoax, which I'm guessing is someone actually did do something where they published something for like specifically to assault the field, which I'm actually quite interested in. A famous academic hoax orchestrated by physicist Alan Sokal to expose what he viewed as intellectual laziness and a lack of rigor in the humanities. Wow. In the mid-90s, there was a tension, often called the science wars, between hard scientists and postmodern sociologists. The sociologists argued that scientific truth was merely a social construct defined by politics and culture, rather than objective reality. Alan Sokal, a physics professor at NYU, believed that sociologists were using scientific terms they didn't understand to support nonsensical arguments. He believes in PSI. I think it was, what was the wording? ESP. It was, where's ESP here? Oh, PSI. Okay, I guess that is, yeah. For PSI, precognition. It was really that he was able to find data that proved PSI or suggested PSI, but you could consider that perhaps it's not that the data was wrong. It's just how he went about getting the data such that it was indicative of that. Kind of it assaulted the standards of what good data was. And like what people ought to do in order to get sufficient data for a claim. The trap. Sokal wrote a paper. Oh, I remember this, I think. Transgressing the boundaries towards a transformative hermeneutics of quantum gravity. The paper was complete gibberish. It argued that gravity is not an objective physical force, but a social and linguistic construct. He filled it with nonsensical math and quotes from the journal's own editors, praising them for their insight that physics was just a capitalist narrative. He submitted it to Social Text, a leading cultural studies journal. The punchline: the editors of Social Text accepted and published the paper without checking the physics with a physicist. They believed it was a serious philosophical contribution. On the day of publication, Sokal revealed the hoax in a different magazine, essentially saying, "I wrote that paper to prove you have no idea what you're talking about and will publish nonsense if it agrees with your worldview." Wow. This is kind of goated. When people ask if Daryl Bem's ESP paper was a Sokal-style hoax, they're asking, did he write this paper just to troll the psychology community and prove that their peer review system is broken? And as mentioned, the answer is no. Yo, Filcher, what's good? Seems to be a hard thing to get data on, right? I've heard it said a lot. If the experimenter has strong disbelief, it has an effect. Wow. What's goody? Look how the secular dogma breaks their brains. All right. 1.2, the ethical abyss, the Diderot staple fraud. While the field wrestled with the methodological gray zones of the Bem paper, a far darker scandal emerged in the Netherlands. Staple, a star social psychologist and dean at a university, was exposed for fabricating data on a massive scale. Staple had built a career on results that were elegant, clean, and perfectly aligned with the intuitive expectations of the field, such as the finding that messy physical environments promote stereotyping and discrimination. The Staple case was not merely an instance of a bad apple. It revealed a systemic rot in the peer review process. Staple's fraud went undetected for nearly a decade, not despite the peer review system, but because of it. He later admitted that he was able to publish fabricated data so easily because he gave editors exactly what they wanted: clear, significant interactions with no messy noise that typically characterizes real human data. Forensic linguistic analysis of his fraudulent papers later revealed that they used more scientific jargon and certainty markers than genuine papers, an overcompensation that went unnoticed by reviewers dazzled by the results. The fallout was catastrophic. Dozens of papers were retracted, and the reputations of Tilburg, Groningen, and Amsterdam universities were severely damaged. More tragically, numerous PhD students who had unknowingly written dissertations based on Staple's data saw their degrees and their early careers vaporized. What? They took away their degrees? I feel like the degree is built up or bolstered by doing the science and not the validity of the science you came up with, right? Like I feel like maybe this is anti-academic, but I feel like if you put in the work and you use data that you thought was legit and you came up with like a good scientific conclusion from it, then I would say like you're a worthy scientific candidate for the degree. I feel like you shouldn't lose your degree over that, but maybe that would be maybe that would be frowned upon by academics. Hey, what's good, Onion Helmet? We're doing the deep dive. Oh, this notorious paper. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how notorious some of these papers were. All right, the replication failure, the social priming dispute. The third pillar of the collapse was the failure to replicate a canonical study in social priming. In 1996, John Bargh and colleagues published a study showing that undergraduates who were primed with words related to the elderly walked more slowly down a hallway upon leaving the lab than those primed with neutral words. Okay, I know there's a lot of studies like this, so I'm curious if this type of thing was actually just like debunked and now it's not known to be a thing. This finding was cited in every major textbook and popularized in bestsellers like Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. Okay, that's probably where I got some of this stuff. In 2012, a team led by Doyen attempted to replicate the study using more rigorous controls, including laser timers to measure walking speed rather than handheld stopwatches operated by research assistants who knew the hypothesis. They found no effect. When Doyen published these null results in PLOS One, after being rejected by top journals for lacking novelty, Barg responded with a blistering public attack criticizing the replicator's competence. Wow. After being rejected by top journals for lacking novelty. And then the originator responded with criticism. Crazy. This response backfired spectacularly. It highlighted the defensiveness of the old guard and their reliance on authority rather than empirical reproducibility. It galvanized a younger generation of researchers, the reformers, who began to view the refusal to accept replication failures as a sign of a degenerating research program. The elderly walking dispute marked the beginning of the end for the social priming boom, leading to a decade of failed replications that would eventually see the subfield largely dismantled. All right. Yo. These phone emojis are pretty cool. 99% of social science research is disproven by talking to the boomers at the grocery store. Yep. Social scientist concludes that ancient human societies were actually communists. Who would have thought? Wait, I got a call. That claim has been debunked. The conservative social scientist has discovered that ancient human societies were actually fairly conservative. Wait, I got a call. Yep, this is a tricky field, but hopefully we'll get some good news by the end of this thing. Though I think this thing leads up until earlier this year, where we start seeing the U.S. administration to start making laws about what ought to be science. So I don't know if there is a happy ending here. We'll see. Part 2: the anatomy of failure, mechanisms of unreliability. The crisis of 2011-2012 spurred a wave of meta-science, research on research, that sought to identify exactly how the field had gone so wrong. This inquiry revealed that the problem was not just fraud or incompetence, but a suite of accepted statistical practices that inflated the rate of false positives to unsustainable levels. All right, so this is what I think was discussed earlier. The garden of forking paths, p-hacking, and QRPs. The central technical culprit identified was the prevalence of questionable research practices, colloquially known as p-hacking. This refers to the exploitation of flexibility in data analysis to force the p-value below the arbitrary threshold of 0.05, which is required for publication. In a seminal 2011 paper, Simons, Nelson, and Simonson demonstrated that by combining 4 common QRPs, a researcher could increase the false positive rate from 5% to over 60%. These practices include optional stopping, checking the statistical significance of results as data is collected, for example, after every 5 participants, and stopping solely when p is less than 0.05. This capitalizes on the random fluctuation of p-values in small samples. Then there's selective reporting of dependent variables, measuring multiple outcomes, for example, 3 different scales of aggression, and reporting only the one that worked. Covariate roulette, including or excluding control variables until the analysis yields a significant result. And outlier management, removing data points based on post hoc criteria that favor the hypothesis. Wow. That's crazy. That one, I don't know why, but this one seems to be like the most inappropriate, even though they're all inappropriate. To like straight up create post hoc criteria. These decisions typically occur in what Andrew Gelman calls the garden of forking paths. The researcher may not even be consciously hacking. They simply make analytical choices that seem reasonable at the time, but are subtly guided by the desire for a significant result. The cumulative effect is a literature filled with statistically significant findings that are nothing more than noise mining. Crazy. Oh, this is crazy as well. Harking, hypothesizing after results are known. Closely related to p-hacking is harking. This occurs when researchers explore their data, find an unexpected correlation, and then write the manuscript as if they had predicted that correlation a priori. Harking destroys the logic of hypothesis testing, which relies on the ability of a theory to predict unknown data by masquerading post-diction as prediction. Harking makes theories appear more robust than they are and hides the immense number of failed hypotheses that were discarded along the way. Surveys in 2012 suggested that a majority of psychologists admitted to harking, often believing it was simply good writing to present a coherent narrative. Jeez, this was only 13 years ago. Go back to doing experiments like Galileo. Just drop shit and estimate. True. Yeah, it is kind of impressive for these early scientists to like come out, like find things when they don't have crazy analytic tools. More than inappropriate, a Coloradoan DNA scientist falsified several of her findings for criminal proceedings. Whoa. Many dozens of people went to jail as a consequence, some of whom might be innocent. Going to look into that now. It was fairly recent news. That's crazy. I mean, that's just a straight up crime. That's insane. The power failure and type M errors. A critical realization during the crisis was that psychology studies were chronically underpowered. Statistical power is the probability of detecting an effect if it truly exists. For decades, the median power of studies in social psychology to detect a typical effect size was estimated to be around 0.5 or lower, meaning a coin flip's chance of success. Low power creates a doubly dangerous situation. First, it leads to a high rate of false negatives, type 2 errors, but more insidiously, when a low power study does yield a significant result, it is almost mathematically guaranteed to be a gross overestimate of the true effect size. This is known as a type M magnitude error. A lucky hit in a small sample will invariably look massive, leading to published effect sizes that are inflated by factors of 2, 3, or even 10. This explains why early replications using large samples found effect sizes that were half or quarter of the originals. The original studies weren't just lucky, they were exaggerations of solidified into fact. That's also crazy. The file drawer problem. This is like when or if people would fabricate stuff about you to the local bishop and you'd go into confession and the bishop would be like, well. Yo, Daniel N. Standragoras, is Mandragoras a thing? Is that a person? Oh, a plant. Standragoras. It's a genus of plant belonging to the nightshade family. Very nice. Mandrakes. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is what I look like at 8 a.m. Okay. That one was a little esoteric. So no, it's all good. If it works, it works. That plant looks hilarious. It does. So her name was, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Is it like Yvonne? Missy Woods? And she was with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for 29 years. Whoa. So what was the intention here? What was the reason? This September, or what was the motivation? It was reported that one person convicted on the basis of her evidence is being retried. Nice. It's Yvonne. Oh, Yvonne. Yeah. How is the character in Succession? Siobhan. How is that spelled? Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know. Succession. Shiv. Shiva, is it? Oh, no, this is a Siobhan. Oh man, look at that. Siobhan. Wow. Okay. Oh, Siobhan is one common spelling of Siobhan. Yeah. Me when I lie to the local bishop at the local maiden. And townsfolk be stealing me white bread, milled at the fanciest mills, so thine bishops seek for them forgiveness. A lot of people talking about Succession. Would you recommend? I would recommend. I really like Succession. It's a little dark. It's both like the saddest story ever, and it's also hilarious. It's like a comedy. It's a very dark comedy, and I would just recommend you don't get too attached to anything or anyone, and just enjoy the show. Because it will brutalize you. But the second watch through is a ton of fun. All right. What do we got? The file drawer. Compounding these statistical errors was the file drawer problem, the systemic bias against publishing null results. Journals seeking impact rejected studies that failed to find significant effects. This created a distorted view of reality where only the affirmative evidence was visible. True, it's actually like good to know what doesn't work, right? A 2011 analysis suggested that over 90% of published papers in psychology reported positive results, a statistical impossibility given the low power of the designs. This bias meant that meta-analyses, often considered the highest form of evidence, were essentially garbage in, garbage out, synthesizing a biased sample of p-hacked studies to produce a confident but false conclusion. Wow. This guy is to psychology what artillery was to war. Which guy? Which guy are we talking about? That's pretty cool. All right, then we get quantifying the crisis, the era of mass replication. This is 2015 to 2020. All right. This is this past decade. Or he was the canon, I guess. Oh, psychologists would like to fire him from a canon. Okay, moving from anecdotal failures to systematic evidence, the period from 2015 to 2020 was defined by large-scale collaborative efforts to quantify the replicability of the field. So this is cool. So now it's like, okay, everyone's now allowed to try to replicate things. It's at the beginning here, it said that there was kind of like they described it as like a gentleman's rule that you wouldn't be, I don't know, stepping on people's toes in that regard. But now it's like, okay, we got to be figuring out who's good and who's not good here. These projects fundamentally changed the conversation from are there some bad apples to is the orchard blighted? The Open Science Collaboration, 2015. The watershed moment for the crisis was the publication of Estimating the Reproducibility of Psychological Science in Science in August 2015. Coordinated by the Center for Open Science, this project involved 270 researchers attempting to replicate 100 experimental and correlational studies published in 3 top psychology journals in 2008. The results were stark and devastating. Replication rate. Only 36% of the replications yielded significant results compared to 97% of the original studies. It's so crazy to like read this stuff, retrospectively. Like, in order for them to go from, considering, oh, do we have a replication problem to like just figuring this stuff out. Like you have to try to replicate the studies. You have to like get a bunch of people to do these things. You have to then, write about it. Like there's a ton of effort that goes into just what we read here, where they're finding these things. Effect size decline. The mean effect size in the replications was less than half the magnitude of the original effects. Disciplinary variation. Cognitive psychology proved more robust with a replication rate of approximately 50%, while social psychology plummeted to approximately 25%. Wow. I guess that makes sense. It's probably just easier to fluff data here. This single report validated the worst fears of the reformers. The majority of published findings in the field's top journals were likely false positives or massively exaggerated. It shifted the burden of proof onto the original authors and signaled the end of the era of blind trust in peer-reviewed findings. All right. The Many Labs project. Following the 2015 report, the Many Labs initiative began testing whether variation in context, for example, time of semester, campus location, cultural differences, could explain replication failures. A common defense from original authors was that replications failed because they were done at different universities or with slightly different populations. Many Labs 2, 2018, tested 28 classic and contemporary effects across 60 labs in 36 nations. The results showed that sample heterogeneity, context, had very little impact on whether an effect replicated. If an effect was robust, it replicated everywhere. If it was false, it replicated nowhere. And then Many Labs 5, 2020, focused specifically on 10 studies that failed to replicate in the 2015 project, testing whether adhering strictly to expert-reviewed protocols endorsed by the original authors would rescue the findings. The results showed that even with improved protocols and author input, the effects largely remained undetectable or trivial. This effectively debunked the incompetent replicator defense. Get owned. Yeah, this is pretty crazy. The DARPA SCORE program, recognizing that unreliable social science posed a risk to national security, for example, for intelligence analysis or psychological operations. The Defense DARPA launched the Systematizing Confidence in Open Research and Evidence, SCORE program, in 2019. The goal was to develop automated tools to assign confidence scores to research claims. Early results from the SCORE program, published through 2021 and 2022, reinforced the earlier gloomy findings. They found that replication rates in psychology and education hovered around 42%, significantly lower than economics. Crucially, the project demonstrated that human prediction markets could successfully forecast which studies would fail to replicate, suggesting that the flaws in these studies were visible to expert observers even before data collection began. Wow. Suggesting that flaws in these studies were visible to expert observers even before data collection began. Crazy. Lost it. Hello, hello. We lost connection for a second there. To answer one of your questions, Woods was indicted on 102 counts. Nice. OMG, Stan. What happened? It seems we are being attacked. They don't want us to read out this stuff. Given the reproducibility crisis, where can we go to verify whether some study that we remember learning about was legit? Who's aggregating information on valid studies, given that we can't rely on studies within I don't know, like what is off limits? Like the studies within these decades, or is this we can't rely on studies earlier than 2015. We can't solely rely on journals, something like that. I'm ready. Tie me to a missile and fire me at the universities. Dr. Stanlove, or How I Learned to Love the Bomb. Social science journals or social studies? Are we talking in general? I think this is social science and cognitive science. I think this was something that was psychology-wide. Hey, we're now live. Okay. Causalities. Casualties of the crisis. The fall of iconic theories. Oh no. All right, this is going to be exciting. The crisis was not merely a statistical abstraction. It resulted in the theoretical demolition of some of the most famous ideas in 20th century psychology. These theories, once the bedrock of textbooks and popular media, have been effectively erased from the scientific canon. If only the paper was there when Heidegger was writing all that stuff no one understands, he would be so ecstatic. Hashtag Dasein. You're saying only if this paper was there? I mean, when Heidegger was writing that, like, I mean, his thing isn't even scientific. Like, it's literally intuition. I feel like that's what these philosophers are doing. They're literally just taking other philosophies and taking their own intuitions, and they're just like kind of writing. They're conceptualizing something. They're just like they're kind of speculating, just with a lot of certainty. I have a sick idea. Okay, let it rip. All right, the death of ego depletion. For 2 decades, the theory of ego depletion, proposed by Roy Baumeister, dominated social psychology. It posited that willpower is a limited resource, like glucose in the bloodstream, that is consumed by exertion. A classic study claimed that resisting cookies made participants give up faster on a subsequent impossible puzzle because their ego was depleted. The theory began to crumble when a meta-analysis in 2010 questioned the small study bias in the literature. A massive registered replication report in 2016 involving 23 labs found a null result. He defended the theory, blaming the specific protocol used, but subsequent large-scale replications have continued to fail to find any effect. By 2024, psychology textbooks began removing sections on ego depletion or framing it as a historical theory rather than a factual mechanism. The collapse of ego depletion is perhaps the most significant theoretical casualty of the crisis, as it dismantled hundreds of derivative studies on self-control and decision-making. Okay, we gotta figure out. While the theory of ego depletion has been dismantled due to the replication crisis, is there still any sense that top-down attention slash focus leads to exertion? That seems quite intuitive. But it seems like these ego depletion studies were debunked. Is there some nuance that I'm not getting here? What's going on here? I'm going to print out this paper and hand it out to psychology students on campuses. Tell them to switch to neuroscience. Well, so the cool thing though is like after 2015, we have to expect that there's a lot of scrutiny. So I wouldn't say that like stuff that has come out within that time, especially stuff talking about the replication, uh, like I wouldn't expect that to be similarly flawed. So you might be able to say like everything prior to that is potentially suspect and requires replication, but I'm sure people are getting to that. Like the most important studies that came out prior were sifted through, and they were uh, attempted to be replicated, and they either did or didn't. And there's probably papers that show that now, following higher standards, which I think we're going to get to in that paper. Neuroscience soldiers for the stream. I mean, we need psychology people as well. Like now part 2 is all about psychology rather than just neuroscience. Stand holding on by a thread. Yeah, I mean, this type of thing isn't absolutely necessary for the way that we talk about stuff. It's just this is just how I, understood things. So I want to make sure that before I let go of that, I understand what that I'm letting go of the right thing here. Dismantled replication. Hello, Energy Domter. What's good? I like Freud's theory. He was like Galileo. It's all about sex or something like that. Just like a shot in the dark. Just drop it and make it work. Yeah. Your intuition is spot on. Even if the specific fuel tank theory of ego depletion has been dismantled, you are sensing a real biological phenomenon, but the mechanism is different than what we originally thought. The nuance that I am missing lies in the shift from resource depletion model, running out of fuel, to a waste accumulation and opportunity cost model. Okay, here's the breakdown of why top-down attention feels like exertion based on the latest neuroscience. The exhaust fumes theory. The old ego depletion theory relied on the idea that your brain runs out of glucose, fuel. This has been debunked. Your brain does not run out of sugar just by thinking hard. However, a major study published in Current Biology provided a new physical explanation. It suggested that high demand cognitive work leads to the buildup of glutamate, a neurotransmitter, in the lateral prefrontal cortex. The mechanism: glutamate is an excitatory chemical for your neurons to send signals. When you use intense top-down attention, glutamate accumulates in the synapses faster than it can be cleared away. Excess glutamate is potentially toxic to neurons. The sensation of fatigue is likely a protective mechanism. Your brain detects this toxic buildup and deliberately makes the task feel harder to force you to stop, preventing damage to the neural circuitry. Wow. You aren't running out of gas. You are choking on exhaust fumes. Crazy. Okay, that's similar to how lactic acid accumulates in the body during anaerobic lactic exertion. Nice. I think that's why that sounds so intuitive to me. I'm probably heard about the lactic, like the lactic acid side. Eventually, it shuts down the ability to exert muscular energy, right? That's probably like a common mechanism that arises. The opportunity cost model, psychological nuance. Another leading theory that explains the effort of top-down attention is the opportunity cost model. The brain is an efficiency machine constantly weighing value. Top-down attention is expensive because it locks you into one task, preventing you from doing other potentially rewarding things. Okay. As you focus for longer, the cost of missing out on other things rises. The feeling. Okay, so this is a shot in the dark, I feel like. The feeling of effort or depletion is actually a signal from your brain saying the return on investment for this current task is dropping. We should switch to something else. I doubt this is the case because a lot of times you gain so much reward from significant effort here. So I would be, I don't know, I would be slightly more hesitant about this one, but perhaps there's a lot of I mean, this seems like it's tough to prove with evidence, but perhaps there is evidence for this. It's a conflict signal. The exertion is the subjective experience of your executive control system fighting against your brain's natural urge to switch to an easier, more rewarding task. I mean, I guess that could be the case. Oh my gosh. Since you're interested in the exertion aspect of attention, would you like to know about restoration protocols like non-sleep deep rest or specific sleep stages? What is this, a Huberman ad? That specifically target the clearance of this metabolic waste. Okay. Interesting. So how does this connect with the free energy principle? Certainly that hasn't been debunked. How would this connect such that free energy still makes sense of top-down exertion, just not in the original way proposed? Okay. Eventually it shuts down the ability to, okay, yeah, if you've ever run 400 meters as fast as you can or played hockey, you've felt the lactic burn, right? It's been debunked. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but... Or are you saying the free energy principle's been debunked? I'm pretty sure that I've read like scientific papers that have come out this year that have talked about the free energy principle. Okay. The free energy principle has not been debunked. In fact, it's gaining traction and offers a mathematically robust explanation for exertion that completely sidesteps the empty gas tank fallacy. Under the free energy principle, top-down attention isn't burning fuel, it is increasing precision. Here is how the free energy principle makes sense of exertion, metabolic costs, and why thinking hard feels like work. Attention is precision weighting. The brain is a predictive machine. It is constantly generating a model of the world and checking it against sensory input. Prediction error, the difference between what you expect and what you sense. The volume knob, precision, the volume knob on that error. So when you pay top-down attention, focus, you are turning up the precision gain on specific neural populations. You are telling your brain, treat this specific stream of information as highly reliable and important. Ignore the noise. The cost, mathematically and biologically, high precision is expensive. Maintaining high gain states requires higher neural firing rates and tighter synchronization. This is where the FEP intersects with the biological reality of the exhaust fumes mentioned earlier. Okay, maintaining high gain states requires higher neural firing rates and tighter synchronization, leading to the glutamate release and the issue there. Fatigue is interoceptive surprise. This is the key shift. In the old model, you stopped working because you had no energy left. In the free energy principle model, you stopped working because continuing would violate your priors about survival. Surprise is too high. Because continuing would violate your priors about survival. Right. Okay, your priors about survival. This is specifically referring to the fact that the glutamate is going to hurt. So the free energy principle states that your brain's primary goal is to remain within a specific set of psychological states, homeostasis. You have a deep, hardwired prior belief that says I am an organism with balanced neurochemistry and no toxic waste buildup. Though it's important, so I think the leading science currently, when it talks about priors with regards to predictive processing, it's not referring to like static facts. Like it's not like you have prior beliefs about like I am this. It's like priors about action. And so that action could be the generation of a thought like this, but it's more of like priors about what I should be doing based on what we're getting here. So, nah, it's debunked. We should just debunk things just for fun. Here's the chain of events under free energy principle. Action, you engage in intense focus. Consequence, the high precision state rapidly accumulates metabolic waste and depletes local resources. Your current body state now clashes with your deep prior belief, low waste balance. This mismatch generates a massive interoceptive prediction error, and you experience this error subjectively as mental effort or fatigue. The exertion is a control signal. The feeling of exertion is your brain minimizing free energy. It is urging you to change your policy behavior to resolve the error. The fastest way to fix the error, I have too much glutamate, is to stop the high precision task. Okay. The missing piece here, for me, is the interpretation of why the brain would have developed to what's the word here? To modulate attention via glutamate. I could just put that. Like, it's not just happenstance that, like, oh, thinking hard leads to the, you know, the release of glutamate, and that is why the brain stops us from thinking hard. Like these systems develop in very, like, slow, careful, incremental ways where the glutamate buildup would actually function in some way. Like, we can interpret it in such a way where it functions in a way that facilitates the homeostasis here. This is the $1 million evolutionary question. It seems like a massive design flaw. Why build the most critical? Like, that's what we would say. It's not a design flaw. This is definitely like a, you know, part of the mechanistic design that arose. The answer is likely lies in coupling. Evolution rarely invents new tools when it can repurpose existing ones. Glutamate wasn't chosen despite its link to energy metabolism. It was likely chosen because of it. Here is the missing piece on why the brain developed to modulate attention via glutamate, connecting biology to the free energy principle. The turbocharger principle, metabolic coupling. Imagine designing a car engine. You could add a separate battery for the turbo boost, or you could use the exhaust pressure from the engine itself to spin the turbine. Evolution did the latter. Glutamate is fuel. Glutamate is a direct byproduct of the Krebs cycle, right? So I understand this, but, like, it ensures you cannot separate thinking from fueling. If the brain used a completely safe, independent chemical for attention. Okay, this is what we're looking for, really. Evolution prioritizes speed and plasticity over longevity. Top-down attention requires rapid synchronization of distant brain regions. This requires ionotropic receptors that open and close in milliseconds. Glutamate is the specific key for NMDA receptors. These are unique because they are coincidence detectors. They only fire if two neurons are active at the same time. This is the biological basis of learning. The trade-off, the only way to get this incredible speed and coincidence detection is to use an excitatory mechanism that floods the cell with calcium. Okay, so this isn't quite what I was looking for yet. The fuse function, the free energy principle interpretation. Under the free energy principle, the brain is a self-organizing system that must stay within variable bounds. If attention is the mechanism of increasing gain, turning up the volume on information, there must be a physical limit to that gain. If there were no limit, the brain would minimize prediction error by simply increasing precision to infinity, obsessing over a single pixel of reality until you starve to death. Wow. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess the interpretation here is that if we were to focus too hard on one thing, that would hurt our more holistic ability to survive. Glutamate toxicity is the physical implementation of the complexity cost, the logical limit. The FEP says you should stop because the model is getting too complex. The glutamate says you should stop because the synapses are getting toxic. How about in the context of deep learning? it seems that attention and exertion are required for effective learning in such a way where we would consider that the mechanism here contributes to such a process. I don't know if that's the best way to say that, but we just kind of want to make sense of this. Like as adults, attention is huge when we're talking about learning. And yes, sometimes this type of attention is quite uncomfortable. We could also talk about meditation in this regard. Like it's very difficult to do mindfulness meditation. Not because you're like, it doesn't seem like you're doing a lot, but holding your attention on something, even as simple as your breath, is very difficult. And your brain's going to want to do a lot of things, and it's going to be costly to just focus on one thing. Your intuition holds up. Okay, in fact, we can map the biological glutamate exertion model almost one-to-one onto modern AI training dynamics. Oh, that's not what I meant by deep learning. Okay, let's just let's get rid of deep here. Learning, or perhaps we can consider how this exertion is necessary for something like mindful meditation, which has many positive outcomes. Human learning? Are my ears burning? I sure hope not. Are your ears burning? Did I say something that burned your ears? Human learning. Wise Sage. Yo, Jago. Playing League. I had so much to say about some of your earlier stuff. Well, write it all down or make a voice memo. Oh, involving attention in your brain, analog circuit stuff. Hell yeah. Okay, this is precisely the trade-off. In the context of learning the toxicity, the glutamate buildup, and exertion, metabolic cost, aren't just byproducts. They are the triggers for the update. In biology, no pain, no gain is literally true. The cellular machinery required to learn, rewire a synapse, is only activated by the very chemical conditions that cause fatigue. Here is how the exhaust fumes and free energy principle explain why learning must be hard to be effective, and how this applies to meditation. And yes, we can only speculate as to why this has to be. The other thing that is, I saw something recently where it's like our pain and pleasure parts of the brain are like pretty similar, or they overlap a ton, which is also kind of crazy and contributes to this whole, probably to this same type of idea where no pain, no gain. Ask me when I'm off. Okay. I meant it like someone talking about you or similar. Oh, I see. Yeah, I think I've heard figures of speech like that. It's a saying for when someone is talking about you that your ears are burning. I want to say it's Roman, but I don't know really. Did I mention your name, or was I just talking about mindfulness? In cognitive science, this is a concept called desirable difficulty. It states that if a task is too easy, you learn almost nothing. If it's frustratingly hard, you learn a lot. The answer is in the NMDA receptor, the holy grail of neuroplasticity. By the way, neuroplasticity as a topic is coming up on this channel. I think it kind of opens us up to the entirety of part two. Everything that we do in part two involves neuroplasticity, like in some sense, whether that is literally just thinking about what you should be doing, choosing a goal in your mind deliberately. Obviously we talk about learning and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, Emotional regulation has so many effects on neuroplasticity, and therefore, or more significantly, effects on your own well-being and understanding going into the future. Are we back? We're back again. I don't know why we're jumping around like this. Yeah, meditation, nice. Stream is burning. Yeah, stream's ears are burning. We're talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what. I think every once in a while this happens. It happened maybe a couple months ago. I guess it's internet related. I'm not sure. Otherwise, this internet's been pretty strong. I don't know if there's perhaps a mechanism that we could use through Restream where we have a second stream ready to go. Also, I'm curious if, I guess, yeah, I'd imagine that. Actually, you know what? I don't think this is a streaming issue, or I think this is a Restream issue. Like, I think Restream, I don't know if we just have low priority, but I remember when this happened previously, connection fatigue buildup, maybe. Very nice. When this happened previously, I switched to not using Restream, and I just streamed straight to Twitch, and there was no issue. So I'm not sure what to do about this. How difficult is it on your end? Like, is it something where the page refreshes itself, or does it really, like, does it kick everyone off and then everyone has to refresh? Should I call an airstrike on them? Do you have that kill streak? You've got an airstrike ready to go? The connection. Okay, the massive surge of glutamate required to open the learning lock is the exact same surge that causes the exhaust fume buildup, fatigue, when discussed earlier. So what happens, though? Like, what's so bad about... what if you power through? Free energy. Learning is model failure. Under the free energy principle, learning is the process of updating your internal model to account for a prediction error. If a task is easy, your current model works perfectly. Prediction error is 0. The brain says, why spend energy rewiring the circuit? The current circuit works fine. Exertion is the signal that your model is failing. When you feel mental effort, you are experiencing the friction of high precision prediction errors. You try to solve a hard problem, your brain's automatic prediction fails. You force top-down attention, high precision, to resolve the conflict. This high energy state forces the brain to update the model and learn to reduce the effort for next time. Okay, meditation, the heavy lifting of doing nothing. You're right that this seems contradictory for meditation, which is often sold as relaxation, but neurologically, mindfulness is a heavy resistance workout. The brain has a default mode network. This is the mind wandering circuit. It is the path of least resistance. It is where your brain goes to save energy. When you meditate, you are engaging the task positive network, specifically the lateral prefrontal cortex, to forcibly inhibit the DMN. Every time your mind wanders and you catch it to bring it back to the breath, you are performing a bicep curl for your attention span. It's definitely something Sam Harris has said in the past. The exertion you feel during meditation is the metabolic cost of overriding the brain's default energy-saving setting. Why this is good. Free energy principle view. Anxiety and depressive rumination are often low-precision loops, the brain spinning in a rut without resolving anything. Mindfulness trains you to apply high precision to your own internal state. You learn to observe a thought, I am anxious, with high fidelity, which often resolves the prediction error and dissolves the emotion. The exertion of meditation builds the capacity to do this. All right, awesome. Okay, we can get to that later. the serious guys don't move for a long time, and then all kinds of body pain comes, and it is a very powerful practice. Yeah, I can only imagine. You can get in a storm of pain, aversion to pain, thought about pain. Jeez, that is terrifying. How long do you think that would have to be? Like an hour? Or are we talking like 3 hours? I guess thinking about when I'm like on a plane or a bus for a long time, maybe I start feeling those things after like an hour and a half or 2 hours if I'm not distracted. But then you just see it as neutral information, or however you want to say, and ride the wave. Yep, that's the goal. You want to get to that point where when emotions pop up, you aren't absolutely demolished. It's not that bad because most of the time you can bail whenever you want. Stretch your knees, scratch an itch. Right? Yeah, it's a very safe learning environment. Like I imagine that it's like it's harder to meditate in public because there's always a chance that's like something is going to happen that you do need to tend to. That's like external to you. But if you're in the safety of your own home, then when you meditate or safety of whatever environment, and you meditate for a long period of time, even if you start feeling these types of pains, it's very much like you still have this like overarching feeling of safety. Itches aren't that bad, but then you go through 100 itches. The worst one of that is very hard to resist. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's hard stuff. Very challenging, but rewarding. And we will get into that really in depth in March. All right, so we lost the ego depletion, which this almost seems like a caricature of like a psychological theory, like that we literally have like fuel that burns off. All right, the power posing debacle. In 2010, Amy Cuddy and colleagues published a paper claiming that standards in high power poses, for example, hands on hip, Wonder Woman style, for 2 minutes increased testosterone, decreased cortisol, and increased risk-taking behavior. The findings fueled the second most watched TED Talk in history and a lucrative consulting industry. Was this TED Talk not legit? Oh my gosh, I remember watching this thing. I guess this... All right. However, replication attempts by Rainhill et al. Found absolutely no physiological effects on hormones. Okay. So even if there's no effects on hormones, can there be an effect on confidence? Statistical analysis of the original p-value suggested that they were too good to be true and likely p-hacked. In a rare move, one of the original authors, Dana Carney, issued a public statement disavowing the findings, stating, "I do not believe that power pose effects are real." Yeah, that's goated. And detailing the specific p-hacking strategies used in the original research. Okay, I guess that's pretty funny. Despite this, Cuddy continued to promote the concept as a life-improving technique, leading to a bitter public battle that highlighted the discontent between commercial, psychological, and rigorous science. All right, now we got to go into a side discussion about this. Even though power pose, even though power posing affecting hormones was debunked, has there been any evidence that it helps in some other way? For example, building confidence, etc. I should literally just do a video, like a PSA of these debunked, I guess myths we could call them. Because I don't think everyone got the update. I feel like that's something that, you know, could be needed. Darmerdom, I am at. I've been good, actually, ever since we last spoke on this. I'm up to 675 seconds. So what is that? That is 11 minutes and 15 seconds. And that I might not have updated that one for today. No, I think I did update that for today. If you made a video debunking psychological research, it'd be about 3 hours long for part 1. Jeez. Nice. And yeah, no, I definitely enjoy it. I just need to make sure I stay with it for as long as it takes for significant changes in my brain to take place here. Experience anything cool, anything pleasant? No, right now it's still just like it's very chill. It's just building comfort with thought and with just sitting there. I might need to find like a different sitting pose, or I need to just just do it. I just need to get better at it. But yeah, no, I'm gonna keep at it. I'm gonna try to just keep going all the way through. I think I'm gonna try to keep going all the way through until at least March, and then we could see. We're gonna see where we're at, because in theory it takes 6 days for me to build 30 seconds if I do it every single day. So this can get pretty long. Becomes a Buddhist monk on episode 1 of the Stan Show. Yo, the Stan Show. What network is hosting? What's my pose? It's literally just been me sitting on the couch with my, like, trying to keep good posture. So that's been, somewhat hard on my back, because I'm not like, I'm sitting straight up without a backrest. So it'd be as if I was like sitting here. There we go. It would be as if I was just sitting like straight up like that. And yeah. Maybe I should just use this chair, because then I could kind of do good posture and sit back. It's either Adult Swim or one of the online streaming services. Netflix will do. I'll do Netflix. Me and Brian Johnson will both have our documentaries right next to each other. Back pain is the real deal. Hell yeah. I find it's so tricky to say something like a power pose is debunked. How do you remove the placebo effect from it? Like, if power posing specifically has a higher chance of activating the placebo effect, it seems it does something to me. I don't know. It seems kind of wishy-washy. That's a good point. But I mean, you could say that about a lot of things, right? You could say that about some magic tonic. Like, anyone who drinks the magic tonic might think they are. It's like Harry Potter 6. When Ron drinks the magic tonic, or he thinks he drinks the magic tonic. And yeah, we could still scientifically say that the magic tonic isn't magic. That's debunked. But yeah, the placebo effect is not debunked. So it really matters whether or not you believe it or not. Or at least very common. Back pain is the real deal. At least very common. If a fake magic tonic had 100% efficacy of activating the placebo effect, though, that seems to muddle it for me. Right, but it's only 100% efficacy for people that think that it might be legit. So it's, this is akin to, in my mind, this is like akin to when we're talking about religion and stuff like that. Like, religion can help people out. Like, we see it happening, but it might not help someone out who is very much science oriented and atheist already. Like they're going to see that, and they're unable to transfer the benefits of faith into their own well-being. Like it's just not allowed. Like they're not able to benefit from that placebo effect. So science is still like when we say debunked, we're operating under a different rule set than whether or not it can work via the placebo effect or not. So it's important that we like keep certain words only for when we're talking about things that are scientifically valid or not. Okay, the short answer is yes. While the hormone hypothesis that posing increases testosterone and decreases cortisol has been effectively debunked, the psychological effect remains a robust finding in scientific literature. Current research suggests that power posing helps not because it changes your biology, but because it changes your self-perception. So, I mean, this is a case where I don't even think we could describe this as necessarily the placebo effect. I think there might actually be something going on here with like literally you feeling big, in the sense that you're like, I don't know, imagining yourself as some bigger. It's like more of a framing type of thing. Like we're gonna have to look into framing in part 2, and this is kind of an example of that. The felt power effect, the most consistent finding across replication studies, including those that debunk the hormone claims, is that expansive posture increase felt power. That is, this is a subjective sense of being in charge, capable, and assertive. So you know what? It might even be like inappropriate for us to talk about the placebo effect with regards to this type of discussion, because the placebo effect would be something like no, I guess that doesn't work either. But yeah, I don't think this is the placebo effect is usually like, you know, there's something that does work, and then you get the pill that doesn't work, and you see that the pill that isn't supposed to work actually does the thing it's supposed to do. So in this case, it's not like they're, you know, it's not like the placebo is making the hormones happen. Like the hormones don't happen regardless. So I think we can just say that the, you know, power posing is not debunked as an effective tool. It's really just that the mechanism behind the tool has been debunked and just changed. It's been updated to be more clear. Power posing in the public toilet cubicles and bashing open the door when someone has the gall to knock and say, "Hey, is anyone in there?" Whoa. This is gonna get you in some trouble here. So I don't understand. So you're inside, and then you bash open the door from the inside, and you say, "Hey, is anyone in there?" Like in the bathroom, or are you just doing this to confuse them? Because you might win in that regard. Right. Yep. All right. It's likely an anti-slouch effect. The crucial nuance discovered in later studies, specifically in Major's 2017 studies, that the benefit often comes from avoiding contractive postures rather than performing expansive ones. Wow. The trap slouching, hunching, or crossing your arms actively signals threat or defeat to your brain, lowering your mood and confidence. So this is effective. Like, I feel like the TED Talk is still there, except for maybe some of the things the TED Talk says. Because I don't think I even remembered anything about hormones. I just remembered the practical takeaway, which was this, like the trap, the fix. The power posing might simply be returning you to a neutral, non-defensive baseline. In many studies, a neutral power pose was as effective as a power pose, but both were significantly better than slouching. Wow. You don't necessarily need to stand like Wonder Woman. You just need to stop making yourself small. This is perhaps the self-validating validation hypothesis. This is perhaps the most interesting psychological mechanism for building confidence. Research suggests that posture acts as a validity tag for your thoughts. How it works: if you have a thought, for example, I am a good candidate for this job, while sitting upright and confident, your brain tags that thought as valid and you believe it more. Yo, that's crazy. This is another example of how much our rational thought is emotional and affected by the body. The warning: this works in both ways. If you have negative thoughts while holding a powerful posture, you might actually become more confident in your negativity. Yo, that's crazy. It is most effective when paired with positive self-talk. Jeez. Crazy. Dominance versus prestige. Recent research in the past 4 years distinguishes between two types of confidence signals. Dominance, taking up space, hands on hips, spreading limbs. This signals aggression and intimidation. It boosts felt power, but can socially backfire if done during an interaction. You look arrogant. Or prestige. Straight spine, open chest, head up. This signals confidence, respect, and successful leadership. Verdict: for building confidence that translate to social success, prestige postures are superior to dominance poses. Wow. Since the hormonal magic pill effect isn't real, you shouldn't rely on it to biologically de-stress you. However, you could use it as a cognitive intervention. Do it in private. Poses best done alone, for example, in a bathroom stall before an interview. Someone is knocking, so I bash open the door. That is Jordan told me different. Oh, are we talking about the lobster? Are we saying Jordan Peterson's lobster? What did Jordan say? Did he say? He might have said that. He actually might have said something to do with serotonin and your actual posture. But that would be wrong. That said, obviously, the main point that he makes with the lobsters is with SRIs, which would work, right? Like if you actually insert serotonin into the mix, then yeah, you get the outcome. But yeah, it is interesting that when we have the low serotonin, we do put ourselves into those weakened positions that affect how we think. So I'm a good candidate for this job before you get absolutely dumpstered in the interview while you power pose. See, I know these things. He was saying lobsters have serotonin, right. You could tell psychology isn't serious because Jordan Peterson himself spends half the lectures talking about the Bible and lobsters and myths or whatever. I mean, yeah, it depends what we're talking about, because I do think that there's a lot of benefit from pointing out why people might have thought certain things within like the Bible, or why. I mean, that's not even the best way to say it. It's like why these types of thoughts would have emerged over long spans of time, and how they would have, like, why they would have crystallized in these ways. Obviously, it's speculative. Like he's trying to interpret why these things would have happened, leveraging metaphysics and contemporary science, and while he might be wrong on power posing and hormones, he is often right about certain science things. That said, there have definitely been cases where he's made crazy conclusions and also has used language in very ambiguous and inappropriate ways. So I'm not going to be, here defending everything, but at some point we're gonna be watching those Bible lectures because I think they're kind of great. Jung destroyed. Kierkegaard proven right once again. There's two girls, but because of the ravages of socialism, they're forced to share just one cup. Oh no, Jesus. Oh man. Am I supposed to hear that in my head with Jordan's accent? He can't keep winning. I don't know much about Kierkegaard at all. I gotta do that deep dive at some point. All right, we got to go back. We got more debunks to see here. Let's see if they're all things that I, at least considered would be true. I guess the power posing one doesn't actually conflict with my understanding. None of these actually like conflict, but it's the nuance of like the mechanism behind them that are, I guess, being debunked here, which is quite interesting. All right, the end of social priming. Building on the Barg elderly walking failure, the entire subfield of social priming, the idea that subtle unconscious cues can... So this is actually literally something I said a couple days ago or yesterday. So this is something that I did understand to be true. So let's see if it's the same deal here. The idea that subtle unconscious cues can exert powerful effects on complex behavior has largely collapsed. Studies claiming that holding a warm cup of coffee makes one more generous, or that thinking about a professor makes one better at Trivial Pursuit, have failed to replicate repeatedly. By 2024, citation analyses showed a citation bubble burst for these topics. While these papers are still cited, they are increasingly cited in the context of replication failure rather than as valid evidence. The collapse of social priming represents a fundamental correction in our understanding of human agency, suggesting that behavior is far less susceptible to subtle environmental nudges than previously thought. So, yeah, I want to see, what is the, we got to do a separate one for this. Given the collapse of social priming in psychology, I want to understand the extent to which our brain is primed. This goes to all the biases that we were talking about yesterday. Like, how many cognitive biases have been debunked? For example, anchor. What were some of the other ones that we talked about yesterday? I don't remember the names, etc. I've heard that colors and in a room affect how people affect people's well-being. How apt is that? I want to know. Okay, I should just say I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah, what are we allowed to think and what are we not allowed to think here? Because this type of idea, what baby? Whose baby is this? Too many nerds trying to criticize the confident people. I'm trying to get a sense of like where the bounds are regarding priming and framing, stuff like that. Because it seems quite intuitive that framing is something that we can leverage. There's a lot of like studies regarding volition and scenarios like I've talked about this before, but exposure therapy requires some sort of framing. Like you have to want to do this thing, and that you could consider as some sort of framing or priming. So what is the extent here? The replication crisis in psychology has indeed been a reckoning, but it hasn't wiped the slate clean. It has mostly acted as a forest fire, clearing out the flashy underbrush, social priming, while leaving the old growth redwoods, core cognitive biases standing. Here's a breakdown of what has been debunked, what remains robust, and how to view environmental factors like room color. The collapse of social priming. You are correct that social priming took a massive hit. This was the specific idea that subtle, often unconscious cues could complexly reprogram your behavior. the famous failure, the Florida Effect study, which claimed that reading words related to the elderly made undergraduates walk slower when leaving the lab. This failed to replicate repeatedly. The distinction the baby you should keep is semantic associative priming. If I show you the word doctor, you will recognize the word nurse faster than bread. This is a robust mechanical feature of how our brain retrieves information. The collapse only applies to the idea that these simple associations hijack your complex motor or social behavior. Right, okay, for example, seeing money won't make you instantly selfish. Okay. Okay. Ah, this is so tough. Because now this is like, this is implying that like we can't throw out the idea that we do get primed by words, but it's just what does that priming actually affect, which is now subject to scrutiny. And it's really just pointing out that what the studies showed, or at least what that study showed, doesn't hold up. And I think we mentioned a couple others in the other thing that don't hold up. Cognitive biases, a green versus red list. You mentioned anchoring. Surprisingly, anchoring is actually one of the most robust effects in psychology. It has stood up to replication extremely well. If you hear a high number, your estimate will almost always be higher. Here's a cheat sheet on where the famous biases stand now. The green list, robust and replicated. All right, let's make sure we get these down in part two. Part two, biases. Concerns and biases. Okay, let's. We got anchoring. Have we already wrote this? Actually, we have, yeah. Let's just add on to this. We've got confirmation bias. We already wrote availability. Heuristic, hindsight bias, framing effect. We react differently depending on whether a choice is presented as a loss or a gain. Right. Wow. For example, 90% survival rate versus 10% mortality rate. Jeez. What kind of paper is that? Bro, come on now. Okay, but no offense, I don't understand working in this way. Do you trust what it's telling me? Oh, that's a good question. I do trust what it's telling me. This type of information I feel like is very easy for LLMs. There's information that LLMs can't get well, but this type of information I do trust from LLMs. I don't know if that makes sense, but I distrust everything it says by default. I mean, I trust this LLM more than I trust people I know in real life, and I wouldn't say that I should distrust everything that person says, right? Like there's a level of reliability we have. You know, when we're talking with people and LLMs, or at least that's how I think about it. Well, the links are right there. Yeah, I guess we could click a link. So we're going to Wikipedia. Can we actually get into Wikipedia here? How does this work? If I click this, framing effect. This choice was then presented to participants. How many people would live? Or with negative framing. In other words, how many people would die? Oh, so it's literally taking this and it's summarizing this. Right? Like it doesn't actually have the mortality numbers here. But yeah, I feel like it's a pretty effective tool right now. Also, Gemini is Gemini 3 right now. This is the strongest model right now for factual information. That said, it's also pretty high in what's it called? What's what's the word, hallucinations, but it's not that like it hallucinates a lot. It's just that when it does or like when it does have like information that it's missing, it is likely to hallucinate. So, but what I'm trying to get at is this is the type of information that it can easily get that would be very obvious from its training data. There's information that's not easy to get or not obvious, and that's the type of thing that I do start getting more concerned about. Also, once you get into like more complex topics, you have to be careful about the way that LLMs talk, because they can say things that are like true, but they're like more ambiguous than they should be, really, if they were actually in the field, such that you might understand something that's different than what's actually true, but still is following what it says. We could do a quick cross check with other LLMs for funsies. For which topic though? Which topic should we use for this? But because the well is poisoned. You see, the thing is, like, you can say that about any human. Like, humans are not rational beings. They're not necessarily knowledgeable beings. like humans are, like, the well of each human is poisoned by being wrong many, many times throughout our life. I understand myself that way. I am constantly wrong. I'm constantly wrong, and I constantly think I'm right about things that end up being wrong. I did it literally last week. If Jago's still here, I said something to one of our friends that was just factually wrong, but I just thought it was right. But because the well is poisoned, I want to do a quick cross-check with another LLM just for funsies. You could click 10 links, and one will make no sense, and another will be slightly wrong. It could make 10 synthesized summaries of information or ideas, and one will be made up, and others will be slightly wrong. We should have a naked Agora night. This is very different than the previous messages I just read. Debating and rhetoric. Why not the togas? What happened to the togas? Aren't y'all not naked right now? I can't believe you guys would show up to my stream clothed. Like, what is going on here? If you ever get around to publishing, you'll need to find the original sources to your bibliography anyways. Right, yeah, so in the actual document, I'm trying to be, because I know the scrutiny is going to be coming, I'm trying to be quite thorough with not only the citation, but explaining what the citation holds and why it's relevant for all these things. That's going to be tough to do in part 2. It's a little bit easier here, but it's going to be, and I also, there's a ton that we need to add to in, not here actually, but actually, yeah, not here yet. We've got this is where we start getting into science, so this starts picking up. But yeah, once we start getting into, yeah, here we need stuff. We need more stuff on embodied cognition for sure. We need predictive processing stuff. And then there's going to be a lot of stuff here. But then once we get to conceptualizing or understanding, we're not going to need as many things here. Right, we need schema theory because that's still connecting us to science. Brandom, we can just leverage here. And that takes us for a lot of this. So, and then, yeah, I need, I don't know if I'm going to need stuff for the epilogue, but not for the framework of freedom. Not for any of this. So, we'll get there. But yeah, no, I agree. But we're also not publishing, so that's not a huge deal right now. I'm more concerned about people just coming here and being upset that the citations aren't there rather than eventually publishing. Sorry, King, right away. Oh, man. Maybe the red and green list versus another LLM. Maybe Dharma has a better idea. That is such a mystical way to refer to Dham. Chat. Okay, so what would be the way to go about this? Can you create, given the replication crisis, and specifically the actually wait, why don't we just go with this first message? Oh, this is kind of neat. They're going more in depth here. Elderly priming money. I thought it said monkey. Money primes, selfish behavior mix, generally small to null. That was the same thing said. Mostly failed, mostly failed. Why the failure is extremely small effect sizes, if any. What survived? Perceptual and semantic priming. Not all priming is dead. Priming was originally a memory and perception concept, and these effects do replicate robustly. Perceptual priming, faster, more accurate recognition of stimuli, words, shapes, objects. So that's what this said about certain words make you think of doctor, will make you think of nurse. You have just seen or seen frequently, supported by decades of cognitive psychology and neuroimaging. Semantic priming. Oh, this is the same one. Semantic, I guess not perceptual is more like, I guess, yeah, if you were to see something, I guess you could say you could see a word, but I guess this also falls under perceptual. Small but reliable effects, tightly constrained to milliseconds level differences. Priming exists, but it's limited to low-level perceptual memory processes, not major real-world behaviors. Cognitive biases. All right, here we go. Are they exactly the same? And what is their... Now, ChatGPT here is not giving us sources, but... are they exactly the same? Anchoring, loss aversion. Do we have loss aversion in this already? Because this is a huge one that I do want to talk about. And loss aversion, actually no, I don't want to go in that direction, but this is a huge bias to make sure that we're aware of. Framing effects, strong and replicable. So framing, we do want to have a whole. Okay, good. We want to have a whole. Not good in the sense that good because I'm glad that this can work because it's you know, as a tool this would be very effective for stuff in part 2. I think the sources are at the bottom. I might. Oh, okay, that would be cool. That would be cool though. It should tell us though where the sources go to. Like maybe when I click on the source, it'll jump back up, but. Confirmation bias, hindsight bias, availability, endowment effect replicates. What was the endowment effect? This is something we talked about yesterday, I think. Cognitive bias where people place a higher value on an item they own. Right. We did write that down. Overconfidence bias. Okay, let's write that down. That's one that we want to talk about. Did I lose it? Where did I go? The red list, mixed context. Okay, so this broke red into 2 categories. Ego depletion, the marshmallow test. Is this on here? Power poses, ego depletion, power poses, facial feedback. Do we have that one here? Power posing. The marshmallow test, original interpretation. It was originally sold as a test of willpower predicting future success. New studies show it mostly just measures the child's socioeconomic background. Rich kids can afford to wait. Poor kids take the food when they can. Yo, that is so sad. Wow. Okay. Man, it's crazy that teachers would just like teach this. I mean, I guess, you know, they just get the script from science. Facial feedback, smiling, happiness, mixed. Some pre-registered replications studied replications succeeded, others failed. Likely a small effect, sensitive to methods. Wow, so smiling doesn't just give you Don't people say this all the time? Just smile and you'll feel happier? Crazy. Marx wins yet again. Yeah. Look, I've seen bad mistakes made even in neuroscience, let alone school curriculums. Right, right. Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like as kids and just growing up, like you just assume things work in the world, but then you realize that, you know, it's very messy around the corners. But that's why it's really important to have like a strong scientific method. And the coolest thing to come out of this story that we are, oh man, I don't know how long the stream has been because this says 44 minutes on our most recent hiccup. But the story to come out of this is that the methodology for determining whether science should what counts as good science or what is true has been upgraded. It's been looked at and it's been improved upon, which is cool, which is nice. So it's not something where it's like, oh, we had a worse methodology, we need to now throw everything away, or we have to not look into science. It's like now we just need to follow more stringent rules. For example, Sokolov misrepresented his own findings in a 2004-ish paper referring to a 1999 chapel he co-wrote in a book. Interesting. Abolish schooling for real. That's not what I was trying to get at. Mandatory naked agora for 10 years instead. He said that the brain consumes 20% of our body's energy, which implies that the brains of large men do much more work than the brains of small women. The truth was it's 20 watts, not percent. And weren't we saying it's the same for everyone? Is that what you had mentioned previously? Good idea. That's how they did it in ancient Greece. And look at the minds it produced. That's what we should ask Embrace Primalism when he's back. It's the same for everyone. Yes, 17 watts. That's so interesting. Okay. Do colors in a room affect well-being? The answer is real but biologically simple. Don't trust the interior design charts that say yellow makes you creative, purple makes you spiritual. That is largely pseudoscience. However, there is a psychological reality based on arousal. Oh, okay. What is true and what to discard? Arousal. Warm colors, red and orange, have long wavelengths and can slightly increase physiological arousal, heart rate, attention. Cool colors, blue and green, are generally less arousing and more calming. This is why hospitals and prisons often use cool colors to keep baseline stress lower. Biophilia. We have a deep evolutionary preference for nature-like environments. Colors that mimic a savanna or forest tend to be perceived as more restorative and can lower cortisol levels compared to harsh artificial environments. Okay, what do we have over here? Color effects fall broadly in two categories. We've got sensory physiological, and we've got aesthetics and environmental psychology. Light intensity and wavelength affect arousal, alertness, and circadian rhythms. Blue light in daytime increased alertness. So this is a little bit of a simplistic way to talk about blue light in daytime, but warm colored lighting promotes relaxation. Bright versus dim color has stronger effects than hue alone. Do these contradict each other? Warm colored lighting promotes relaxation. This one says that it increases physiological arousal. So we might have something on our hands. Okay. I have to say the same thing to both. I'm seeing conflicting information between two LLMs. You're saying that warm colors can slightly increase physiological arousal, and ChatGPT is saying that warm colored lighting promotes relaxation. How can I make sense of this? So I'm guessing that this is an instance where the ambiguity of how simplistic of a story they're giving is hurting our ability to learn from this. What do we have here? 4, right? We're at 4. Oh no, it's different on each. Okay, bright versus dim has a stronger effect than in hue alone. I don't think we talked about hue here. People reliably report preferences. Greens and blues feel calming. Reds feel exciting or stressful. Okay, now this... Doesn't this contradict this? Oh no, I guess they could be the same. But this connects with what we saw over here. Cool colors. Some effects on task performance and self-reported mood replicate, but are small. Effects depend strongly on individual differences, blah, blah, blah. So, overclaimed, exaggerated. Claims that colors dramatically changes productivity, morality, aggression, creativity, or interpersonal behavior are not well supported. We've got specific emotional. There's no evidence that painting a room pink will inherently make you compassionate. Context matters more than color. A room might feel more passionate in a romantic hotel, but terrifying in a dentist's office. Okay, and then we could get to that. Efficiency, semantic priming, and risk assessment biases. All right. This is a classic case of semantic overload. All right, let me actually read things before that. Because this is a great case study that we've got going on here. Imagine all the diogeneses. What is a diogenesis? Or what is a diogenesis? Is it? So you're saying how many of these Greek philosophers we could have if we were all togaed up in the Greek thing, or nude, as we were saying. One of the founders of cynicism. Why do we want this guy? The warm color lighting is real. Flux is goated. That is for sure. Diogeneses. Diogeneses? Oh, Diogeneses. Like sneezes, Diogenesis. Nice. Greek cynicism is not the same thing as the word, kind of like a stoicism. Oh, nice. Diogeneses. Diogen. I don't know what's going on here. All right. This is the classic case of semantic overload. The word warm is being used to describe two completely different biological mechanisms. Both you and ChatGPT are right. You mean, all right. But you are talking about different things. To make sense of this, we have to distinguish between color temperature and spectral hue. So this is a great example of where if someone just read the one, they might come away with the wrong information, right? Like, or they might come away with the wrong implication. So we do have to keep our eyes peeled. Diogenesis. Diogenes. Does it actually Diogenes? Diogenes. Is it really Diogenes? Yes. Yes. I believe so, yes. Okay. Very nice. But yeah, no, this was a great idea to get the second LLM up here, because it points out that issue that we can have with language models, where the level of like abstraction that it's talking about is such that you can come away with something that is correct in some sense, but you might come away with the wrong implication. Pronunciation confirmed. Nice. I'm sorry, but I'm going to forget that in like one day, maybe 2 days. Okay, we have to distinguish between color, temperature, and spectral hue. The ChatGPT angle. Warm lighting. When ChatGPT says warm lighting promotes relaxation, it's referring to color temperature of white light measured in Kelvin. So this is like warm light in terms of flux. Your angle, warm colors. I see. Warm colors versus warm light. Now, is this something that I just took away? Warm colors / lighting. Okay, I see. So what was the actual original thing? Was this my fault or was this its fault? Light intensity and wavelength affect arousal. So warm colored lighting. That's ambiguous. Right. So yeah, that's I think that's ambiguous wording. Let's see. How did Gemini do on that one? Warm colors. So this one was more clear. We're talking about colors, not lighting. So this is, yeah. Gemini takes the point here. Very interesting. All right, we gotta get back to the main stuff here. End of social priming. That was a stun lock. All right, part 5: the sociological war, methodological terrorism, and the culture clash. The crisis precipitated a vicious cultural war within psychology. This was not just a scientific debate, but a generational and power struggle between the reformers, often younger, statistically savvy researchers active on social media and blogs, and the old guard, senior professors who controlled the journals and tenure committees. The Fisk letter and the methodological terrorism. The tension boiled over in 2016. Man, this is so recent. When Susan Fisk, a past president of the Association of Psychological Science, wrote a leaked editorial draft denouncing what she termed methodological terrorism. In the piece, Fisk accused online critics of engaging in destructo criticism and bullying, suggesting that careers were being ruined by self-appointed data police who critiqued research on blogs and Twitter rather than through the traditional peer review channels. All right. The term method. So as far as I'm concerned, like the methodology is king. So regardless of whether it's some person on Twitter or if it's the grand professor at whatever school, if the logic's there, then I don't care, or I do care, depending on what the logic says. The term methodological terrorism became an instant meme and a rallying cry for the reform movement. Critics argued that Fisk was conflating harassment with legitimate scientific scrutiny. They pointed out that the victims of this terrorism were often senior figures whose flawed work was finally being checked, while the real victims were the PhD students and junior faculty who had wasted years trying to replicate impossible results. True. Yeah, like there's a lot of like if we were to think of like this, in some moral way, there's like a lot of ramifications for these like false results. Not only might it make people think that they're doing something that they're not doing, just like as a ramification of what is being implied by these things, it also leads to people losing their time or their degrees, as we saw earlier. And that's no good. So, at some point we don't care if someone who had, used these problematic what should I call them? These problematic tools or tricks. Um, it's less like we don't care as much about their job, and perhaps that what they did was constitutive of like malpractice in some sense. Vicious, terrorism, decidedly alarmist. I got charged with terrorism back in 2010 for importing multiple 2009 Honda Civics illegally. Wow, how'd you do that? Back, are you taking suggestions related to psychology? I don't think today. I think we have to read through this thing. We still have some time, or we still have a good amount to read, and maybe not enough time. Good to know that academics are part of the fun too. True. If the logic's there, then I don't care. Stan 2025. Hell yeah, let's get that in the stream summary top quotes. The wording of this part is hilarious. The Fisk letter and methodological terrorism sounds like some Unabomber shit, bro. Jesus. Is Gemini saying victims in quote like it's alleged or in the sense that they weren't victims? I can't quite draw the inference. All right, where are we seeing victims here? All right, they pointed out that the victims of this terrorism victims of this terrorism were often senior. Oh, right. I think this is pointing. It's like Gemini is being what's the word? Not necessarily. There's two words and I can't remember either of them. But yeah, I think it's not the first. I think it's the second one. It's being a little more coy about this. Sassy Gemini. I like that. It's also just it's providing information. Like I think it's telling us. Like I don't think it's trying to make a joke here. But I think it's telling us that they would describe themselves as victims, and they would describe this as terrorism. And yeah, this might be just a tiny violin type story here. So, victims. This comment was paid for by the old guard. Terrorism. This comment was paid for by the old guard. Very nice. My interpretation's the same. Nice. Okay. The backlash to Fisk's letter solidified the role of post-publication review, peer review as a legitimate and necessary part of the scientific process. Very cool. Bullying versus open science. The debate over tone continues to this day. While some argue that the bro-pen science, what does that mean? Can be exclusionary or aggressive, others maintain that politeness should not supersede truth. The case of Paola Chiara Masuzo, a data scientist who turned to open science after experiencing academic bullying in the traditional system, highlighted that the closed system was itself a form of structural bullying. Wow. By 2024, the norm had shifted decisively. Open critique is now standard, and the gentleman's agreement that protected weak science from scrutiny is effectively dead. Bum, bum, bum. All right, part 6, the architecture of reform. This is up until, I think, the training data stops. Out of the ashes of the crisis, a new infrastructure for psychological science has been built. These reforms aim to align the incentives of individual researchers getting published with the incentives of science finding the truth. Registered reports. The most radical and effective reform is the registered report format. In an RR, researchers submit their introduction and methodology for peer review before data collection. If accepted, the journal commits to publishing the results regardless of the outcome. That's really cool. This model eliminates publication bias, or at least incentive, since no results are published, and prevents p-hacking since the analysis plan is locked in. That said, like there's incentives other than just getting into the paper, like such as clout, that might still lead to some p-hacking. By 2024, over 300 journals had adopted the RR format. Studies published as RRs show a much higher rate of null results, approximately 60%, compared to standard reports, approximately 10%, suggesting they are providing a far more accurate picture of reality. The Journal of Neuropsychology and other BPS journals have reported that RRs have significantly improved the quality of protocols. That's cool. Probably not sufficient. Open science badges and top guidelines. In 2014, the journal Psychological Science began awarding badges to articles that shared their open data, materials, or pre-registrations. While initially dismissed by some as Boy Scout patches, they proved highly effective. Data sharing rates in the journal jumped from under 3% to nearly 40% in 2 years of implementation. This gamification was supported by the Transparency and Openness Promotion Guidelines, a framework adopted by thousands of journals to set standards for transparency. Nice. Open science, accept bros. It's right there in the title. It'd be funny if this didn't work because the science itself was just a bunch of physics envy applied to the social sciences. All right, institutional changes, tenure and hiring. By 2024, 2025, the reform movement began to alter the currency of academic academic advancement. Departments at the University of Maryland and the University of Minnesota formally incorporated open science practices, data sharing pre-registration, into their tenure and promotion criteria, explicitly valuing rigor over novelty. In the 2024 hiring cycle, it became common for job applicants to include an open science statement alongside their research and teaching statements. The University of North Texas and other institutions have updated graduate manuals to prioritize students with potential to contribute to scientific literature through reproducible methods. All right, so this is giving us like a happy ending almost. Except we've got we thought it was good in the end, but here we go. Part 7. The fallout today, the 2025 landscape and political weaponization. So I guess just to point out, the cool thing is we are getting different practices being incorporated because of this, and that is just going to benefit everyone. All right. That was totally unexpected. Yeah, this is quite the jump. I don't know if I even asked for this. Can I see it all? No? More? No? I guess I lost it. I can't read that ever again. There's all these sources, but academic fraud fights back. All right, let's see where we're going. And given that I usually don't like to be political, we're just going to read it, you know? As of mid-2025, the crisis has evolved into a permanent state of reform, but it has also been complicated by new and profound political dimensions. The very language of reproducibility has been co-opted by state actors, creating a tension between scientific rigor and political oversight. Political intervention, the 2025 Golden Standard Executive Order. In May 2025, the President issued Executive Order 14303, titled Restoring Gold Standard Science. The order explicitly cites the reproducibility crisis and the falsification of data by leading researchers as justification for a sweeping overhaul of federal science policy. The executive order mandates 9 tenets for all federally funded research, including reproducibility. Research must be independently reproducible. Transparency. All data, models, and code must be publicly available. Open data. Communicative of uncertainty. Errors and margins of uncertainty must be explicit. Acceptance of negative results. Null findings must be treated as positive outcomes. Skepticism. Findings must be structured for falsifiability. So all these things are so far great. Analysis of the EO. On the surface, the executive order codifies the very reforms open science advocates have championed for a decade. It requires open data, acknowledges uncertainty, and promotes null results. However, the scientific community has reacted with deep alarm. The Center for Open Science and other bodies warn that the order grants political appointees excessive oversight to verify reproducibility. The fear is that reproducibility will be used as a pretext to dismiss inconvenient science. For example, climate change models, public health data, or sociological findings on inequality, which, as we've seen, have been removed from government websites by claiming that they do not meet the gold standard. Section 7 of the order establishes okay, this is where we get to the, I guess, the sections that or the tenets that bring in the disarray. Section 7 of the order establishes senior political appointees as the arbiters of scientific integrity, with the authority to correct information, a move that critics argue threatens the First Amendment rights of scientists. The Department of Justice has clarified that scientific information under this order includes models and analyses in the behavioral and social sciences, directly targeting the fields most affected by the replication crisis. Okay. The DARPA SCORE program, this is what we already talked about, is it concluding in 2025, with final reports expected to demonstrate that automated algorithms can now predict replicability with high accuracy. The AI Cyber Challenge and related initiatives have shown that AI can audit code and claims at scale. This implication for funding is a shift towards automated pre-screening. Future grant applications to the NIH or NSF, which implemented new rigor requirements in January 2025, may be subject to algorithmic confidence scoring before a human reviewer ever sees them. This marks a transition from crisis detection to automated quality control, potentially reducing the volume of low-quality research, but also imposing a rigid algorithmic definition of truth. That is actually kind of weird. Like, this is a very difficult one to sift through. Like, you can't give this complete control, just given that there's a possibility of false negatives, but you know, maybe it's just public knowledge or something like that. All right, we got state actors, we got the mandate is fine, the mechanism to oversee the mandate and regulate scientific publishing is contentious. I think so. It depends if the mandate includes the mechanism to oversee the regulation. Big and beautiful science. Yep, absolutely. See today's CDC. Yep, to appreciate how this executive order can go wrong. Denial of robust findings in medical science journals. So, yep. Darwin about to get removed in the school textbooks. Jeez. That's where I draw the line. When they start going after evolution. But yeah, no, I haven't been, I guess, to just to leave it at this, I've just not been thrilled at what I've been hearing about that's been getting taken out of you know, off the government websites, and just, you know, stuff that we know to be true just getting disappeared. So, public trust in science. The fallout has spilled over into public perception. Pew Research Center data from late 2024 and 2025. So I guess maybe this is doing 2025 search as well, or maybe there's just training data that is 2025, I'm not sure, indicates that the percentage of Americans who believe science has a mostly positive effect on society has dropped significantly since the pre-pandemic era, with trust in scientists continuing to wane. This is insane. The level of ignorance about how science affects the food we eat, the systems that, like the buildings we live in, the AC units that we install, the replication, the medicine that saves our lives. Oh, I could go on forever. The replication crisis is no longer an inside baseball academic issue. It has seeped into the public consciousness. The 2025 executive order explicitly leverages this loss of trust to justify its regulatory overreach. The crisis has thus provided ammunition for a broader skepticism of expertise, where failed replication is used as a rhetorical bludgeon against all scientific consensus. Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. It was... Okay. Spengler proven right once again. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. Amen. Textbook erasure in the zombie literature. The final ramification is the ongoing cleanup of the educational canon. In 2024 and 2025, major psychology textbooks have undergone significant revisions. Sections on social priming, power posing, and ego depletion have been excised or moved to historical context chapters. However, as zombie literature persists, studies that failed to replicate are still cited thousands of times, often by researchers in adjacent fields, for example, marketing, organizational behavior, who are unaware of the crisis. Literally me, as of yesterday before 7 p.m. Shout out to Onion Helmet for bringing this to our attention. A 2024 study by UC San Diego found that non-replicable papers are actually cited more often than replicable ones, precisely because they tell better stories. That's terrifying. All right, so we have to keep our wits about us. Conclusion from crisis to correction. The reproducibility crisis in psychology was a painful but necessary forest fire that burned away decades of dead wood. The field that exists in 2025 is smaller, slower, and humbler, but infinitely more robust than the field of 2010. 2010, not 2010. Yikes! I gotta go to bed. The ramifications have been total. Epistemological, we now know that statistical significance is insufficient evidence for truth. The burden of proof has shifted to replication, pre-registration, and meta-analytic rigor. And a lot of the reason why this was the case is because the methodology was faulty, not necessarily this statistical significance. It was that people could get to this statistical significance using, methods that we would describe as like deceptive. Theoretical entire chapters of social psychology have been erased. The textbook of 2025 looks radically different from the textbook of 2010, which is what I would have... What was 2010? What's happening in 2010? 13 years old? 8th grade? I guess, yeah, I might be reading about this stuff in 8th grade. But certainly 9th grade, once we get into 9th grade and beyond, I'm reading just straight up myths in textbooks. Stripped of the magical thinking that characterized the priming era. I feel like priming isn't that huge. What we lost with this priming stuff isn't crazy. But maybe if it was true, then that would be crazy. So maybe the people who believed that it was real thought we lost a huge deal. The crisis breached the walls of the academy, resulting in executive orders that threaten to subject science to partisan reproducibility tests. The fallout continues while the technical solutions, such as registered reports, open data, are working. The cultural and political wounds remain fresh. Psychology effectively sacrificed its public authority to save its scientific soul. Wow. Whether it can regain that trust in an era where its own gold standard rhetoric is being used to constrain it remains the defining question of the next decade. There it is. There we have it. All right. I distrust science because they are materialists. I guess that coincides with the incentive structures that are literally affecting the science's very own faultiness. Or unless you're saying materialist in terms of like a physicalist. I guess materialist could be. I was thinking materialist as in like a capitalist type type materialist, but like a consumer. I don't know what's materialist is someone that also just enjoys having material properties. Is that the other version of materialist? But I'm guessing that you're talking about materialist in terms of physicalism, which I don't think that's a necessary like. I don't think that's a hurdle. Like if scientists believe in materialism or physicalism, which we've said on stream that we can't say that we're actually physicalists, or I can't say that I'm a physicalist in the type of story I tell. It doesn't mean that science isn't like that because scientists believe in some physicalism. Like that doesn't mean I need to throw out science. I'm a material scientist. What's that from? Maybe not Darwin yet, but it was like a week ago. Some judge ordered some new school law in Texas illegal, like having the 10 Commandments in every class and mandatory Bible studies or something. Kind of spooky, I agree. And tenure track, forget it. We're going to backtrack into the Middle Ages soon enough. Luckily, I know a few guys. I'll get you all good positions in church leadership. Thank you very much. What if it had no scientific soul to begin with? Damn, now that's deep. Madonna, scientist equal girl. Oh, I see. I see. I know a line that's very similar to that. Can I find it though? It was a Reggie Watts song. Reggie Watts. Oh. Okay. Well, anyway, there's a song that has just a lovely name. I would check it out. When does he say this?
It's cunt, cock, motherfucker.
Oh, he just says a bunch of curse words, doesn't he?
You take some.
Yep.
Here's another little piece of. I make references to that. It's a set of fuck shit. Then some shit like me.
Okay, you know what? This is when he says it. I'll get it off screen. I don't think we will.
I like the cop.
All right.
So y'all motherfuckers could never get near to me. I'm a cartoon character. You'll never be able to be like me. Me.
When does he say
I like
this?
women.
All right, never mind. At some point he says I'm a materialist. I butchered that pretty hard. I would recommend watching that. I think it's fun. Carlin would love it. Rest his soul. Yep. All right, what do we do now? I think we got to end here. Oh no, given the reproducibility crisis, where can we go to verify whether some study that we remember learning about was legit? Who's aggregating information on valid studies given that we can't solely rely on journals earlier than 2015? So obviously we could try to leverage like an LLM. Like that's a place we could go. But we're looking for something a little more crowdsourced, maybe a little more organized. Me, that would be crazy. All right. If you learned about a groundbreaking psychology or behavioral science study in a textbook or TED Talk before 2015, there is a statistically significant chance it has either failed to replicate or requires massive caveats today, like the caveats we talked about. The quick check tools, we got PubPeer. This is the gold standard for post-publication peer review. If a paper has serious methodological flaws or image manipulation, it will likely have a thread here. So what are we looking at here? Oh, or is it really just like a bunch of random, like just people commenting on? Figure 1 appears to be AI generated, containing misspelled words. What is happening? In a paper about explainable AI for autism diagnosis and parental support? What is going on here? So is there anything we can do in here? We'd have to search for it, right? There's no like ranking mechanism. That's unfortunate. Retraction watch for the worst offenders. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Meet the researcher aiming to halt use of fundamentally flawed database linking IQ and nationality. Wow. So this seems promising as like a place that maybe, but this almost seems like it could just be like a blog almost. Yeah, who gets to post? I don't know. Cite.ai freemium, unlike normal citation counters, Cite tracks how a paper is cited. It tells you if subsequent papers supported, mentioned, or contrasted the findings. If a famous paper has 1,000 citations, but many are contrasting, you know it's controversial. That's actually pretty sweet. Okay. Are we able to just... Okay, this is researchers. Can we get a... Oh, is this 4 people? I was hoping that we get like a ranking type thing. Journals. Yeah, I think we'd have to search for something. I guess that's how people really operate here. They just search. I was hoping for something organized where we could see like a green list and a red list. Spengler was really a sage. Oh, Filcher, have a great one. Stepping away here. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. All right, the replication databases. If you want to know if a study has been successfully replicated, check these aggregators. We got a replication database here. FORT is a framework for open and reproducible research training, advancing research transparency, reproducibility, rigor. Okay, let's check that out eventually. Curate Science, a platform attempting to crowdsource and visualize the transparency and replication status of studies. Yes. Products. Oh, alpha version, beta version, code. Is that it though? We'd have to actually run code. All right. right. Yeah. Leveraging Google client, Google secret. All right, well, I don't want to run this, unfortunately. But that's pretty cool. The replicator index. A blog. Oh, yeah. Mission statement. The purpose of the R-Index blog is to increase the replicability of published results in psychological science and to alert consumers of psychological research about problems in published articles. All right. Let's look into that eventually. The mental patch. Famous studies you should doubt. Since you asked about studies we remember learning about, here is a cheat sheet of famous pre-2015 findings that have failed replication or suffered severe blows to their credibility. Power posing, ego depletion, social priming, marshmallow test, Stanford prison experiment, situation causes cruelty, exposed, archives revealed the experimenters explicitly coached the guards to be cruel. Right, okay, yeah, this was just a ridiculous setup. In general, watching the documentary or the movie that was made about this thing will make you feel just upset. So I don't recommend it. Growth mindset. Oh, believing you can improve leads to massive academic gains. The effect is real but much smaller than originally claimed, and interventions often fail to scale. Okay, yeah, we have to be mindful of that. Growth mindset. We have growth mindset in our notes right now, so framing. Let's put a nice, make sure to check the validity and scope of the growth. Okay. Growth mindset as it had been overhyped at some point. Okay. Just abolish the psychology departments at this point. I mean, honestly, like if Stanford, you know, if any school does this type of thing, I feel like you should just cut it all out. You know, there should have been so much in response to the Stanford prison experiment. Okay, who is aggregating this? The watchdogs. You can't rely on the original journals to police themselves. The real auditing is done by the Center of Open Science. And do they have their own? Oh. What would we want here? Research? I don't know. I should look around there. Data Colada. Oh, very nice. A blog by 3 behavioral scientists who use statistics to detect fraud and p-hacking. They're responsible for exposing several high-profile researchers. Okay. The open science community. This is a decentralized movement of researchers who pre-register their hypotheses. Right. This is just general. Stating what they will test before they gather data to prevent moving the goalposts. That's really cool. Summary strategy. If you recall a cute psychological finding, assume it is false until verified. All right. Very cool. I think we can call it a day now. All right. I guess just as a reminder, unfortunately, I'm not streaming until either Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and then we are back on the grind, at least until Christmas season. But these weeks will be filled out more so than they are now. But yeah, I'm gonna be working on getting our stream summaries up. Hopefully, we do a Substack post as well of like a summary of everything we've done since June, I think. And yeah, I'll be working on the next video script, I think. Maybe we'll get some videos out of streams because that's what I'm going to do as well. When I go through each stream transcript, I'm going to ask if there's like any content that's worth making a video about. Maybe we can get some content out of all these streams. Maybe we can get some short form content out of these streams. That would be cool. And yeah, then we grind. We grind when we get back. Got a lot to do. A lot to see. So yeah, thank you all for chilling in here. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for chilling out and keeping the conversation going. This is some good stuff. What do we got here? You know you messed up when Heidegger makes more sense than you. True. But yeah, it's I feel like Heidegger makes less sense than almost anyone, at least the first time you read it. All right. Yep. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. See you later.